Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast.
So, the question that I have for you for this week, Justin, is
Yes.
What is oldies music to you? I don't remember if we've talked about this on the pod before. We may have briefly, but I want to hear, like, what is oldies music?
At first reaction, I would say to me, oldies is like Motown.
Okay.
Yeah. Like when I hear like Heard It Through the Grapevine, My Girl, like basically like the Big Chill soundtrack to me is oldies.
Okay.
Now, that's because that was what my parents were listening to, like what I remember from when I was young.
Okay.
But technically speaking, what is oldies? I'm not sure what the right answer is. I think it's music made pre Billie Holiday dying. That would be my intuitive answer.
Okay. And when did Billie Holiday die?
I'm going to say 1928, and I'm going to be way off.
Okay, so you went.
Hold on.
Okay, go for it.
He died 1959.
Okay, so.
Oh wait, Billie Holiday was a female. Who am I thinking of? Interesting. Either way, my answer stands. 1959.
Okay, so you actually went the opposite way from what I expected you to go with that asterisk that you threw in there, but similar to my thoughts and different from Colleen. So,
what does Colleen think? What is her definition of oldies?
So this is why I wanted to hear you out without giving any preface to it, because
well, you did preface it. You gave me a lot of time to think about it.
Yes, but I didn't give you any of my input that would potentially
I had no context as to why I was thinking about this.
So my thing is, I think of oldies music, I think of like stuff that like you said, stuff that like my parents would listen to that was older, like old Billy Joel and like maybe some like Neil Diamond and like some of that stuff that's a bit older, Styx, like some like older classic rock that like my parents would listen to and things like that. And so I think that like that is oldies. Colleen, her take is that that what oldies is changes as we progress forward in time. So like now we're in 2022, like fucking like stuff from like 1990 in the late 80s, like fucking like whatever, Nirvana is like practically oldies and all. And
well, that's on like the classic rock channel.
Yes, so but I disagree with this because I feel like oldies is whatever is old to you. So each person's definition of what oldies is like based on their like like what was old when they were young and like coming to acquire their like knowledge and taste of music and everything from like their parents, from like surrounding people that had like more experience, like older people that had more experience listening to music, they had more knowledge than you as like a young person do coming up. And so like I can fully respect that a fucking kid that was born in 2020, like the 90s is like oldies music to them, but that doesn't make it oldies to me, in my opinion. Like I don't like that I don't like the idea of it shifting along with like my oldies music changes just because it's 2020 now or 2022 now, instead of like I can't still just be like, yo, no, that music was my oldies, and then like this was like my like the music of my like childhood, of my upbringing, like listening to All Star by Smash Mouth in the minivan, like driving to my cousin's birthday party, like.
Right. Okay, so there's something about then, like, the definition of oldie. It sounds to me like when you're saying that term, you're thinking about, like, a music that you have positive nostalgia associated with it.
Or of just like a something that's it's older than you. It's like
Yeah, for sure.
it's like
But also,
before
you can't
your
just
time.
arbitrarily say like, "Oh yeah, like Gregorian chants are what I consider oldies."
No. It's like
because that's just as dumb. Like, yeah, dude, we get
right.
it. You know where it started.
Because I think that it's related to each individual and like what their upbringing was and like the older
Yeah,
music and everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Like God,
Well,
I hope people weren't listening to Gregorian chants when they were like 5 years old in the 90s. That would be whack.
that would be edgelord as fuck.
It would be
Like,
whack,
dude,
man.
I don't want to hear your lyrics. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to hear this guttural moan from this group of 10 people. Dude, that's amazing. But here, let me, because this is actually like an interesting question. Let me put this at you. I also think when you say the term oldies, and now that we've like opened it up a little bit, my answer actually is kind of dumb. So I associate like, do you know the Fallout 3 commercial?
I think so.
The trailer for the game, like that played on TV. It was that slow camera move through the fucking nuked out bus.
Yes, I do know. Yeah.
And there's that song on the radio playing, and it's like crackly, and it's coming from a thing that you had to turn. Like, I think that's the sound of oldies.
Gotcha.
In some way. So like, so historically speaking, that would be music made in like 1910 to like 1930s.
Well, just
stuff,
like
right?
I would just say like the record player era for like anything that like for me personally, I think of it
Van Halen.
like things that
Has
were
records.
well like but I mean things that were put out like exclusively on record. I'm not talking about like, oh, you had your 8-track in your car,
Sure.
or like
Sure.
I'm thinking like it was vinyl was the only way you were listening to this piece of music, or your radio. That's kind of like what I associate like oldies. And I'm okay if someone else's oldies is a different thing from mine. Like I differentiate it differently from like a quote unquote genre of music like classic rock. Like because you could classic cars in at least in Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure, are any car that is older than 25 years old. So like a car from my dad's 96 Honda Civic that I totaled
Right.
back in the day
Right,
would
that
be
was right
a
now,
classic
yeah.
car
Yep,
now.
I gotcha.
Like that is
Yep.
so I'm cool with like classic rock and with like those kinds of like old school R&B, like whatever the like specific genres of music like that. I
Right.
understand that those are going to gradually like change with the times. But
You're basically asking
I
like, what was your parents' favorite music?
well yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't think that like oldies is the same as classic rock where it just like
No.
gradually moves forward and it's like dropping off things from the past and picking up like newer things in the front kind of thing.
Dude, are you kidding me? They won't drop anything.
Oh yeah.
literally like Dream On is still their like number 1, number 3, number 5 song, like 50 years running. They don't drop anything. They
Yeah.
just co-opt Nirvana now and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they're like, "Oh, Fall Out Boy, dude, you guys are practically classic rock. Get on in here, you fuckers."
But I'm okay with that. Like, I'm cool with
That's
classic
fine.
rock. Like,
That's for radio play, but the question you're asking is like what's the sound of your childhood? What to you is like
right. Like, that's what I think of when I think of oldies. I don't think of it as
sure,
like a genre of music that changes like classic rock or like whatever,
sure,
or like pop music. Like, you've got like, we at work, I set the Pandora stations that we play throughout the like lobby and everything. And so in the mornings we have like a classic rock thing that like you end up hitting like some Billy Joel and some like different whatever. And
right,
then like midday it swaps to a playlist that does 90s, like 2000s, and today's pop hits. Like, pop has like separate eras of pop as well. Like, you can look at 90s pop or 2000s pop or whatever, and
oh
like,
for sure,
and
yeah.
those are like these set kind of things. But I feel like oldies is like apart from that.
Oh, I would agree.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's not genre specific. It's like,
It's more person specific to me, and I
well, yeah, for sure. Yeah. It makes me wonder, at a certain point, you're going to be able to ask somebody that question and they're going to be like, dude, Lady Gaga was like, that's my version of oldies.
hey, and that would be fine if that ends up
It would be
like,
fun, but it'd be fun. It'd be funny.
because I would be like, oh, my oldies were very different.
Well, yeah, but that's just because
So
you were like born earlier than that person.
no,
But
exactly. So
but have you go back and listen to Monster, or what is it? It's The Fame and then The Fame Monster, where she like re-released it or whatever with like added songs.
yeah,
Go back and listen to those tracks.
okay.
Like, I am floored by what she did on those albums.
In
They're
a good way or a
like,
bad way?
like in a really good way. Like,
Okay.
it's it's good music.
All right.
And it's like, obviously it's like dance and it's pop and it's, for the turn up and whatever, but man, it is, in my opinion, quality like pop.
Hey, I'm about it. I
Yeah,
dig it.
quality pop.
But I just wanted to get your input on that. See if I could get a third opinion.
All right, so wait. What is the song? Wait, what is the song of her childhood? Because now we get to grill her. Now that we've decided what we mean, we get to grill anybody who's wrong.
So for her, she like, it's a lot because her dad was a DJ. I think if I'm remembering correctly, she said her dad was a DJ for a small like period of time back in the day. He loves music, so therefore, like, that's where she got her love of music from. And he still actually has a like Facebook page where he'll put out like throwback like songs, and he'll just post like old music videos from
Right.
like throwback songs and stuff like that. So he like still is very much into that like old school, like he loves his times music. I don't know if there's a specific song. I'll have to ask her if there's like what the music of her childhood is, because if I ask her what her oldies playlist has, she'll be like, oh, Nirvana, because that's oldies now. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
But
they're. I think they'd be. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
but
that's
I'll have to get an answer for you. She'll probably text me first thing tomorrow morning and let me know that I'm wrong and what music she enjoys. So
well, there you go. That's what a podcast is for. Get the people talking.
absolutely. But Justin, why don't you lead us into the episode today? And get this thing rolling.
Well, it is a Wednesday. We release every Thursday. We started off a little differently than usual. It's good to see you, my friend. That was a very interesting way to start a podcast, by the way. I think that was a great question. Now tell me a little bit. How's your week been before we get into the Magic the Gathering talk, the LCS talk? Well, less LCS talk and probably some more of the other stuff. But yeah, tell me about your week. How you been? Give me your rose, thorn, and seed, man.
My week's been good. I have been keeping pretty busy at work and everything. I had a lot of like month end stuff and just catching up from. There was a lot of like. There was a lot of stuff since like my new company took over this property back in September. There were a lot of things that were done kind of as a temporary solution to be able to like keep things rolling and everything.
Band-aids.
Exactly. So this past week I was doing a ton of like I was doing a lot of our month end billing and things like that for our different residents and everything, and so I found a lot of those band-aids and I had to like go back and actually like patch them up and like do all the fixes and everything. So that actually is my rose for this week, because even though it was like tedious and kind of a pain in the ass to like go back and fix all of these like shorthand solutions that they came up with that did what they needed them to do. I feel like I am very much caught up with a lot of my work-related things. And so I feel like I'm in a really good spot to now finally month and a week or 2 weeks or so into this new job be able to like grab the bull by the horns and like start making headway on like the betterment of what I need to be doing with renting apartments and like making connections and contacts with different companies and reaching out to people and doing like my time is no longer going to be consumed with like undoing the band-aid and fixing it the right way. So
you have all those plugs plugged, and now you can just move forward and create your own problems.
exactly. So
Nice.
That's
exciting.
I created enough trouble for myself, so now I've got the other stuff out of the way. I have free reign to mess everything up. So, and for it to be blamed fully on me.
Well, yeah, I mean, before you make another mess, you gotta clean up the mess from before.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just still a mess.
Right.
So, but yeah, so that's my rose. I feel like I can actually like
rose.
focus on improving those things at work and like just making it like a well-oiled machine and kind of get it rolling. So that's good. My thorn for this week is that I mentioned it recently. I just feel like my body is like failing me. And I just feel like I have all these ailments that I'm not finding great solutions to. Like I'm like I've had a little bit of anxiety coming back, and I think it's mostly like stress related and stuff with like bearing down at work and trying to like knock out these things like real quick and having a lot on my mind and everything. But along with that, I've had we talked about it just the other week, I actually have had some like wrist soreness lately, and I think that it is probably associated with like my setup and everything at work. Like my manager got me a laptop like lift thing so that my laptop can sit a little bit higher, easier for me to like see and everything and maneuver, but the mouse and mouse pad is still sitting like lower
Mm-hmm.
on the desk and everything. And so I don't know if it's like the difference, but like the height differential or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably doing way more harm than good.
But that's like, I feel like my wrist lately has been like bothering me a little bit. So I've been kind of trying to keep an eye on that and like whatnot. I'm getting back to the gym, so I've had a little bit of like other soreness body wise, but my like I feel like I'm having just like these more like precursor to more serious kind of ailments. Like I've had some really bad tension in my neck on my right side. My After playing basketball last night, today, like the left side of my knee is really tender. Like my, I guess that's my ACL is the outside like area. I don't know. I'm not sure which like tendon it is on like the outside of the knee, but whatever it is, I feel like I'm just falling apart a little bit.
Well, it sounds like none of that is doesn't sound like any of that is um that big of a concern. I feel like you may just need a massage.
Honestly, I feel like I probably do. Because I think a lot of it is, like I said, it seems more like precursors to like more serious things. Like if I
Yeah.
just like let it continue to go, then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I'm gonna just be like I can't move.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think also some of it probably is attributed to just the fact that I'm getting back to the gym a little bit more and like working out, exercising some muscles, and so maybe having some more tension and whatnot than
Mm-hmm.
what I'm used to
Mm-hmm.
and everything. But yeah, that's just like it's my thorn. I'm aware of it, which I think is the good part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm
You just gotta
trying
do something
to
about it though.
yeah, so I've been trying to like stretch and things like that, but it feels like some of them are more like ligament issues than they are muscle issues. I know they like work together and like
Mm-hmm.
kind of function together, but like you can't like massage out a ligament the same way you can a muscle.
No, but I've never ever encountered.
I'm willing to guess that this is going to be you've never encountered a ligament that's the actual issue and it's always the muscles surrounding it.
Yeah, or if it is like a true connective tissue dysfunction in a joint, likely it would have more to do with like swelling being present or some kind of other damage being present. So then in that case, you would be right in saying that like, yeah, the stretches I do, they don't really help. They don't like they don't take that discomfort away. It may be because there's another musculoskeletal element that's going on there. Like if you were my client, I would tell you, well, you say you do ice your knees, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
So, well,
So
typically that's more like kneecap and like above the kneecap area. That's like the typical area that I notice like swelling. This is
gotcha.
the left knee like outside of it is a it almost feels like it's very localized the
Uh-huh.
pain. So it feels almost like the same as if you like bang your leg against something unintentionally, but I know I didn't.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah. So then in that case, you start thinking about like, okay, well, what attaches to the knee on the outside? Well, your IT band. Your IT band goes all the way up and
Yeah.
attaches to the head of your femur, right?
Yeah.
So there's a world where, okay, so maybe you're doing what you have to for your knees, but maybe just go up the river a little bit, stretch out your hips, stretch out your glutes, and then I imagine that tension eases up on your knee. You don't feel it so much anymore.
Eh.
Basically, what I'm getting at is we're getting old, motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, and I've tried to be good about stretching like before and after exercise and things like that. I'm trying to be a responsible aging person and not destroy my body too badly. But yeah, so that's my thorn. It's starting to catch up with me a little bit, and I think I just need to like you said, maybe get a massage, take the time to do a little deeper care for my body and everything, and make sure it keeps functioning to full potential.
I mean, fuck, even Seinfeld went to the sauna in his show. He put time in his show for the sauna.
Well,
Comedy there.
Seinfeld is so my I watched Seinfeld a lot growing up with my dad. Like we'd always have it on for an episode or two, like before TV growing up or before dinner when we were growing up on TV. And so my dad has always said that Seinfeld is like their tagline is it's a show about nothing, but there is an episode for everything in there.
Yeah.
Like there's an episode about like getting to the car rental place and them not having your car. There's an episode about like, and there are things that are dated but that you can still like relate to
Sure.
things today. Like there's like the episode about who's your top 10 people on your speed dial on your phone and how people are getting upset about like not being the top speed dial, and like I'm sure you can associate that with whether it's like Snapchat best friends or like who's in your favorites on your texting on your phone, like right at the top that are pinned. Like I've got 3 people pinned at the top, you and Colleen are 2 of them, so that like I'm sure that like
My mother's the other one.
everyone loves their mama. Come on, man.
No,
but-
I was saying my mother was the other one on your list.
Oh,
It was just,
you never know.
it would have been better if you called it.
I did not, but that was a good one. But yeah, so Seinfeld, yeah, even they found time for the sauna in there. So
Well, what I'm saying is like he takes care of himself. You know, there's you gotta take time out for this stuff, because by the time your body like really lets you know you gotta stop and do something, man, like that's when it's like gonna be a lot of work.
yeah, it's a lot of like preventative maintenance is you gotta kind of keep doing. So I have to get a little bit better at that. I try to do the basics to like keep it from getting too bad, but I think I need to go a little further with it. So
That's an apple a day keeps the doctor away. That is like what we're talking about right now is the life meat that is held within that little, cliche,
yeah,
right? An apple a day, you do a little bit, you don't have to go see the doctor, but you don't have that apple every day, man, you're gonna have to go see the doctor all the time, and he's gonna fucking hate you.
yeah, or love you because you're paying him constantly.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So
Book an appointment, come see me, dude.
I'll have to.
Yeah.
So that is my thorn for this past week. And my seed is kind of goes a little hand in hand with that, but I am looking forward to getting back to therapy in however long it is until I'm back on health insurance. So being able to get back to therapy and like do like these things that are taking care of my like general mental, physical, body health, like trying to stay up with all of those things and keep uh, stress relatively lower by working through stuff, whether that's physical, mental, all of that. So that's my seed. I'm just looking forward to that. That's not too far down the horizon.
Nice.
So it'll be nice to be able to kind of dive back into those things a little bit and take care of myself. So
Yeah, that's well, I have to say I'm looking forward to it for you as well. That you're looking forward to it so much because I think putting yourself in a position where you're looking forward to doing the things that help you the most, I just think that's a really strong place to be. And it's crazy that we're talking about this, and I'll worm my way neatly into my rose, thorn, and seed. It's crazy that we're talking about this because I was thinking about I was laying on the floor doing some quiet breathing, and I had this thought, and it's like an idea that's popped into my head a bunch of times, and maybe you've been presented with it as well. But like the 80-20 rule, like you derive 80% of your desire, joy, or results or satiation from 20% of the thing that you do, or like 20% of the work. And then
okay.
everything else is there to support that 20% so you can enjoy it as much as you do.
Okay, so and this is more just me like clarifying. So the my initial thought is like the way that I look at work because
Mm-hmm.
like with work I I don't dislike what I do. I've talked about it on here. I don't know if there's a dream job out there for me that I would be like, "Man, I'm just chipper to go to work every single day and like get."
Right.
So, like for me, that 80-20 is like I work because like I need the money and it allows me to do the things I enjoy outside of work. And like
Right.
very fortunately for myself, I don't hate what I do. I
Right.
like there are definitely components I enjoy, but there's plenty that I am not like a huge fan of and I'm like, if I could do without it, I would. But that's my initial 80-20. Is that kind of like what you mean or is it more
Yeah,
like
for
okay.
sure. Like eight. So then do the inverse of that. So then 80% of your time is spent doing things that aren't the thing that you derive most joy from.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay, but those those situations are necessary to give you the 20% that you do get to enjoy. So what I'm getting at is like I it's like a way to prioritize. It's a way to give yourself a hash mark to like compare things to. So if I'm asked like oh hey, do you wanna come to the supermarket tomorrow? I think is does that add to my moving towards this having access to the 20%? Some people don't even have access to the 20%. That's what I'm getting at,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
Is 98% of their time is work and bullshit and family and kids and ex-husband and like all of that stuff. They don't even get the 20%. So what I'm trying to get to is I think about that where it's like, okay, I'm literally fighting for the pod. I'm fighting for Sarah. I'm fighting for like the time to get to play Magic. And when you really put it in perspective and you really understand like, okay, so those are my priorities. I want time to spend with Sarah. I want to be able to record and not just record. Like here's another idea that's very sticky to me is the 5 P's of performance. Have you ever heard them?
I'm sure I have it. The 5 P's sounds familiar, but I can't think of.
Proper preparation prevents poor performance, right? So you also have to think like, okay, so those are the things that I want to do. Those are the things where I derive most of my happiness from.
Yeah.
But doing them poorly would be shitty.
Right.
So you gotta set everything up in a way that
Oh,
when
wow.
you get that, yes,
dude,
so
you're
when you
like
get to those 20%, it's fully enjoyable. And this is the same exact idea that you're talking about with like, okay, all that bullshit's behind me of, okay, all these Band-Aids, all right, I understand that problem. All right, we're going to patch it up. Here's the new way. All right, I see this Band-Aid. We're going to patch it up. Here's a new way. All of that is set up so moving forward, you can further enjoy your time at work. Yeah, let's be honest. Like, life isn't a diamond when you're at work, but the thing about it is, if you set it up properly, you can get a lot out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like, that kind of like blew my mind a little bit, just in the fact that like I hadn't thought about like the individual things. Like, so I obviously, like with the podcast, I think about the fact that like, yeah, I have to take the time to prepare, to listen to like different content out there on topics that we're talking about, to be aware, whether that's watching races, whether that's watching LCS games, watching other regions and everything. Like, I'm taking that time and doing that on my own to be able to put that and make this like good. And like thinking about it in the essence of a relationship too, and like making sure that I have all my work done when I'm not having to hop on the computer at home, and like I can actually like focus and spend time with Colleen and like cook dinner together and do those things that we like to do. Like
how much work goes into
to get to just like
to getting to that dinner.
Yeah.
Just having the bacon on the plate.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that like in that kind of context. Like a lot of it, yeah. I think I think of things so individually sometimes that
it's all nested together, dude.
It is
it's
like
crazy.
It's yeah, it is. I hadn't thought of that. So,
but that's just a sprinkling of the cake. What I'm getting to is, it's these type of things that I try and bring myself back to, and this is my rose, and I'll get on with it, and we can talk about the good shit. But these are the type of ideas that I try and bring myself back to. These are the stickiest ideas that are in my head, that on moments when I'm not feeling my best, these are the things that I try and get to, where it's like, oh, like, these things. Like, these are things that you've incorporated into the process. You get them, you're working with them, and I just think you're making mountains out of molehills. There are a million and one things that have not gone wrong, right? Like, things are set up in a way, and I'm saying this all to say, I was trying to think of like, oh, what's going to be my rose? What's going to be my rose? What's going to be my rose? And I could not for the life of me think of one. I'm just like looking around the apartment. I'm just like trying to think, and it's like, man, what a world I must live in, where like I'm trying to think of like, oh, what would be the shining moment of like my day or the week or whatever, and I'm going over the time and the week and the things and all the things, and it's like, oh man, I can't like pick out a really good thing. Well, fuck, what a great life that must be, where it all just seems like, oh, well, that was cool, that was fun, I love that conversation, what a great game, looking forward to this.
Yeah.
It just seems crazy when you take the time out, all of those moments where like I get frustrated and I'm just like, ah, this didn't go right and blah, blah, blah. It's like, Jesus, dude, relax.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, not having a singular shining moment is kind of a shining moment.
Yeah, exactly. That means it's all like going kind of well. So
either that or it's all going terribly, which it doesn't sound like it is.
Yeah, obviously, like everything is on fire outside of these walls. But here we are doing the pod anyway. But no, yeah, it's just like, so my rose is just like, I'm just doing my best to be grateful, because sometimes I can be such a fucking maniac. And I know I probably say this every episode, but it's just, I just do my best to be grateful. And these are the things that I kind of come to. But my thorn, because I'm trying to post on Twitter and get involved in the conversation, I'm like scrolling to see the conversation, and I just see some things that I don't want to occupy my time. And it's not even like bad stuff. It's funny stuff. It's like engaging stuff. It's like, ooh, I want to check that out. And I'm just like, oh no. These things are built to do it. So my thorn is like, I'm trying to be mindful about how much I'm like mindlessly scrolling, as opposed to like looking to see, like, can I be a part of a conversation? Do I have something like interesting or engaging to say? If not, let's get out of here, go do something else.
That's good awareness to have. Like I think that's one of probably your like the what's it called, the
Superpower.
superpower, like the things about you that like is just like one of the most impressive things to me, is like you are very aware of like yourself and obviously like 80/20, it's taken a lot of different things to like set you up to be where you are, with whether that's like falling short and at some points in time with like different things, and like you're like, oh shit, like that's something I have to pay attention to, or it's like
Right.
something that you're really like fixated on, that you're like, oh, like this is something I really am passionate about, or I'm really care about, that I like, and you like are attentive, but you're very aware of like a lot of things that are like going on around you, and try to like maintain that awareness. With that being
I appreciate
said,
you saying that.
the Twitter, like I had initially, since we created it, like followed a bunch of topics and things like that. Like we can get rid of that too, and just follow specific accounts that we just like if you want to see like the different Magic the Gathering stuff from like the specific accounts and all,
Yeah.
or like the LCS, LCK, like main Twitters and stuff. Like we can just like limit that as well, so that
Well,
you.
to be fair, most of it is like what we would want to be engaging with.
I.
It's just so
It's
fucking
endless.
like,
It's
yeah,
endless.
yeah, it's endless. That's the thing.
There's an unending like amount of content out there, especially on
Right.
Twitter, where it's like I had Twitter up to pull up a couple of bookmarks of little things that I saw, just in case like they popped into conversation from before the episode.
Yeah.
On my Twitter homepage, I like looked away for like 3 minutes. I looked back and it goes 32 new tweets, and I was
Yeah,
like,
that's just wild.
Jesus Christ, I can't even read that fast.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's crazy.
so yeah, it's tough. But I think that's like a smart thing to do, to kind of limit it, and like just like know when you're no longer like actually doing what you intended, of like you
Right.
wanted to put out thoughts, get in the conversation on things, like when it starts to be like, oh, like look at this, look at that, and like you're just flipping through, then yeah, it's a good thing to
Yeah.
hop
Luckily,
on.
take off. And then, so yeah, taking notice of that stuff. But yeah, like I said, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you saying that. And then my seed for the week, in prepping for some various things that we have going on, I realize, and I've taken heed to something that Mark Norman has said. He's a comedian, where when he talks about like writing jokes, is there's a time and a period where you're just sitting and staring at a blank page. Like when you're trying to come up with an idea, what route do you want to go? Like what angle do you want to take this? There's a period where you are just staring at a blank page. But at the exact same time, that's work. That is the work, because it takes time you have to like let the thoughts like come to you. They like do a little dance with each other. You kind of like flit around with some things. You maybe ask yourself some questions. And this is another idea I came across. Like, if you ask yourself a question, like you really want to know the answer, surprisingly, you may get an answer, right? And so you ask yourself, like, oh, what do I want to talk about? Are there any interesting ideas? Like, what cool happened this weekend? What games did I really like? And then those ideas start to float around, and all of a sudden you're typing, you're writing, you're coming up with ideas. But I think what's tough is, and I didn't understand it at first before like doing anything creative. This podcast has been like my first like true creative endeavor where we're we're driving the bus, baby. And it's like there are some times where yeah, we just got to start from scratch here. What do we want to say? What do we want to talk about? And that feeling of the blank page is like really stressful. But it's all part of the process, and you gotta pull things out of that, and it's tough, but like I've said probably 4 times, it's all part of the process, and it's just interesting to note and to create. It's like it's weird and fun.
Yeah, and well, and even to like relate that to other things, like for like our listeners and everything, like who, like this is the most artistic outlet that I've personally had too, and I love that. I think it's a really fun way to get to like do new things, and it's like allowed me to also kind of delve into different avenues of things, like working on little bits of graphic design and video editing and like different components of things that I've been able to like improve upon with myself and everything that like
I've just
I
been staring at
didn't
Neil Diamond on my other screen here ever since you said it. Continue. I'm sorry.
and didn't have knowledge of, and to the extent like I said last week for my flavor of the week for my music, I wanted to like I'm working on trying to learn how to make music or make some sort of jingle, whatever. I'm trying to make sounds sound good together on programs on my computer.
That's funny.
And so like I think that like to relate this and like this kind of creative outlet to like other things similar to like staring at the blank page, I think of it almost similarly to like when like the first time you go to the gym, like as a new gym goer, you like, and I remember that moment because like I started lifting in the winter times in between sports when I was a freshman in high school, and I remember walking in there and seeing like a bunch of upperclassmen, older guys that were like in there. They're all like doing their own routine in this tiny little like squish gym. And they all seemed to know what they were doing. And I walked in there and I'm like, I have not a damn clue what any of this does, except I've seen like fucking SpongeBob curling his stuffed animals on little bars, and I'm like, okay, so like curling like that is gonna like help my biceps out. Like I had such a minimal knowledge of it, but like you're in there and it is kind of like the blank page. Like you are sitting there like stressed out and confused and not knowing what to do, but once you start to like piece it together and get a flow, like things start falling into place. You're like, oh, okay, this does that and this does that, and these are the things that I need to do together. And like now I'm 12, 13 years past that point, and like I walk into a gym and I'm like, I hit the locker room, change, and I'm out there like in my routine. I've got my steps down. So I think like even the act of staring at the blank page almost allows you to like, as you progress, like not do it as much. Like, you start learning things like, yeah, you can stare at the blank page, but like it doesn't need to be as long of a stare because thoughts start flowing a little bit better. You start like
Oh yeah, for
progressing
sure.
through, like almost even like just going through the motions jogs things that will
Hmm.
kind of flow together and all. So
But it makes me understand from like maybe like a writing perspective. It makes me understand like writer's block. I can't imagine if you have like a deadline, your fucking editor's calling you, and you're just like, I can't. I,
yeah.
that must be like actually fucking traumatizing. Because
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and yeah, I'm because you're right. Like true something like that doesn't even compare. Because you're right, you should be able to like you're not starting from scratch every time. You have like frameworks and ideas and whatever. But yeah, the first time you go into it, man, it's fucking blind water.
Yeah. Well, and even like some things like you were talking about with it was Mark Norman
Yeah,
with
yeah, the
his comedy.
comedian.
Like as a comedian, you are kind of going into there with like a blank slate every time. Like it is like each time you're sitting down to write like a new set or something like that,
Hmm.
you kind of are walking into the gym for the first time. Like
Well,
you
you should
are
be. You should
like
be.
yeah, because like you don't want to reuse jokes. You want to find new avenues to tell something funny, to
Right.
like storytell or to like utilize the audience around you or like whatever. So you are kind of like fresh, but you at the same time have like those instincts from previous knowledge to kind of get you going.
Hmm.
So
And just a sidebar, what must be brutal about writing comedy is to not rewrite your own jokes that you've done, but be aware of every other joke that's ever been done
yeah.
and say like, is my angle original? Did somebody already do that joke? Like
Well,
that
but
must be fucking terrifying.
especially nowadays because like I mean everything is out there on the internet nowadays.
Yeah.
Everything's new. Like back in the day, like you could have a simultaneous thought as someone and one person lives in New York and the other person lives in LA and they
And it
tell comedy
never
at their
like
own comedy clubs and it never
sure.
crosses at all and you never even know necessarily unless you have some asshole that's like, oh, I was in New York and I'm here on business and you suck, you stole this joke. And you're like, I've
Right.
never even heard of that guy. like,
That'd be a bad time.
but that's like the world we live in is like everything, like hyper awareness of like other jokes and stuff has to be a fucking nightmare.
Well,
Like,
because as a comedian, you'll get crucified. Think of all the comedians
oh
that
no,
like.
like that's why, like, it just sounds like
Mm,
a nightmare because
mm,
people have simultaneous thoughts. Like
mm-hmm.
multiple
Well,
people can look at something and go like at a problem. Like two different engineers can be like, okay, this is the issue, and then be like,
mhm.
okay, I know how to fix it, and they come to the same fucking solution. And they weren't like, oh, I cheated off his homework. It's just like
Right.
they both knew how to do it.
Well, what's interesting is like we take like innovation and originality like different in a bunch of in a bunch of different avenues. Like in comedy, you have to be original or like you're taking someone's material, your hack, whatever. But then you go to something else that we've talked to before is like hip hop where you use somebody's beat, you chop it up a little bit, like you're paying homage to them. All of a sudden, like you're making them the hero, and blah blah blah. So it's interesting how it can go different ways, depending on the avenue that you're looking at.
Oh yeah, or even the person who's looking at it. I mean,
Sure.
fucking Olivia Rodrigo got crucified for her song sounding like Paramore like a year ago. like,
Mm.
um, so like it's brutal. Like you just have a similar like sound to a song or similar chord progression at one point in the song, and everyone's like, "You
Right.
stole this from blah blah blah," because it's just so accessible.
Very, very accessible.
Yeah. So
I was just gonna say, can you imagine being like a SoundCloud rapper? Can you imagine being the most original SoundCloud rapper? Nobody would ever believe that you were first.
Yeah, no shot. They'd be like, "Oh, you're stealing this from somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't know where
exactly.
yet."
Exactly. Got to be tough out here, man. When
Yeah.
the whole world's connected.
One
But
of
we
these days,
are
I'll be a
lingering.
SoundCloud.
We are lingering at the front door of this show for way too long. We've just been edging our audience the whole time.
Oh yeah, we're just working everyone up, getting them ready for the main show.
For the big old flop. But yeah, you want to talk about some League of Legends?
Absolutely, man. So I guess where do you want to start? Do you want to start with LCS or start with some other regions? Anything in particular that you were what tickled your fancy from this past week?
I'm inclined to talk about some gameplay from some of the other regions, but because of our previous stated issues with the lock-in tournament, I just want to say this. Now, I understand we've got, academy rosters, we got visa trouble, they're not playing on stage, they're, at the houses, whatever. There's a lot that you could point to that lowers the competitive integrity of the thing. So let's call it what it is. We got some rec room brawls going on here.
Okay.
But the analysts and the casters are not in a position where, like, just because it's rec room brawls doesn't make like it feels very weatherman-y, where it's like, oh, it's gonna rain this weekend, and everybody plans, they cancel everything and blah, 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 and then it's sunshine and rainbows and unicorns all weekend, and the weatherman still has his job. So it just seems crazy to me that throughout the whole NALCS studio, the world building and the storytelling little teams over there decided it's going to be EG, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely EG. Wait, so all right, so we're all in agreement? Yep. All right, cool. They have all three analysts on the finals desk. No differences of opinion. You don't want to make it interesting at all. You don't want to argue at all. You all think it's going to be much funnier to just be like, oh, yeah, dude, just straight 3-0. You know what that fucking reminded me of? Do you remember at Worlds, I know I brought this up before, where Yamato Cannon was just memeing the North American teams, and, like, you couldn't even take his analysis seriously after a certain point.
Because it was just, like, started, like, being, like, just jabs at, like, NA and all.
Yeah. That's... not that they were jabbing at Liquid or whatever. They were trying to big up both squads, but like just for story building, you're not going to have one of your analysts beat, Team Liquid. That seemed fucking crazy to me. They had to have the one counter mind be Jat phoning in with his hyper well-researched opinion. He sends it back to the desk, and they're like, yeah, fuck you, Jat. It's going to be evil geniuses all the way.
Well, fucking Jack coached for Team Liquid. Like, dude, of all people, and obviously players have changed and everything, but he knows the infrastructure. He knows Steve. He knows what they're doing more than anyone else behind the scenes. So for no one to take his opinion and actually, like, give it any sort of weight is absurd.
Very. So I have to say that was one of the most satisfying 3-0s I've ever watched that don't matter at all. Because it was like this big old, like, how do you guys not know? Like, I'm watching from my couch, and I knew Liquid was going to win that series. I didn't know if it was going to be a 3-2, a 3-1, whatever it was going to be. But it was going to be way more competitive than they were making it out to seem. And it's like, man, all of your analysts got it wrong? That's crazy, bruh.
Well, and so I'll flip this a little bit on its head and just say there are some positives of the broadcast taking this as a like fucking what did you call it? Rec room brawl?
A
Like
rec room brawl.
yeah. So like one of the things, and this is just like it's unrelated to the teams, it's unrelated to the gameplay itself, but
Yep.
I really enjoyed them kind of testing out waters with different people on the broadcast. I loved that they had Latigris helping to cast some of the games, but not
Her casting was really like pretty strong.
yeah, well, and not only just like allowing her to cast, but you could actively tell that the other people who were casting next to her were allowing her room to kind of like just go with it and see how she did and test the waters, and they were there as like support. Like there were in team fights probably 5 times. I know Kobe does this anyway because Kobe gets so excited. Another reason I love his casting in general because he gets so excited by the gameplay, kind of like similar to Riv to me, of like someone who gets so intensely into the game that they can't even completely contain themselves. And so as Latigris is doing the play-by-play of a team fight and the Renekton goes in, he slice and dices, he hits the W stun, and you hear Kobe go, oh! Like, you hear this little, like, guttural, like, unintended, like, verbal response to, like, how excited he's getting. But he toned it back and, like, held himself up to allow her to, like, have the room to, like, do this.
She just kept on rolling.
And she just kept flowing through it. And then when there was a pause, Kobe is like, oh, my God, that was crazy. Right. And, like, getting, like, talking about stuff that he saw. And so, like, I loved that side of it from the production where, like, because Latigris, like, she had just been, like, an interviewer. And so, like, there have been people like Shox. Shox had an opportunity to cast at different points in time, and she was, like, fine at it. But I feel like she, like, as the LEC or EU LCS at the time kind of progressed and like developed their own production and everything, like she fell so confidently and naturally into that host role that like she just was able to be like, okay, this is what I'm suited for and I'm good at, and this is like the way I want to go with it. But I like that, like, Latigris, like, she was just interviewing people after in the post game and stuff like that. Like, she didn't have a, like, real, like, she had her component of the broadcast, but she didn't have, like, a large component of the broadcast.
Right.
And so they're allowing this time where it is, like, not as serious LCS matches to like allow her to like test the waters and be like, hey, no harm, no foul, like give it a shot. And she like knocked it out of the park in my opinion. So
yeah, I agree. I thought she did really well.
So on the flip side of the production, in terms of like the analysts being so like single-minded, I did enjoy in the actual broadcast and play-by-play seeing some of that like flexibility and like allowing other people to like grow into it and like work through those growing pains in kind of a like just like a safe environment almost.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like I think even more to your point is it was a tri-cast as well. So I think you would be more right where they basically had their team of 2 casters and said like, oh well, the Tigris go try casting, and then she was doing well, so the other 2 didn't have to like be there as much.
Yeah,
but yeah, it definitely did feel like a trial run. But yeah, overall, I thought the series was fun. Just like a 3-0, Bjergsen just running through them. Always fun to watch. But yeah, just the total like just big whiff from the analyst desk made it just like, really?
Do you think that is due to perception of Dignitas maybe? Like, so thinking about it a little bit this way, like obviously like Dig came into the quarterfinals as like kind of an unassuming team that people didn't think they were gonna like perform phenomenally, and then they 2-0 100 Thieves. People are like, it was a fluke, like, whatever. And then they take Liquid to a very competitive 4 games. Like, it was like that easily could have been a 5-game series. I think Liquid coming out on top was like pretty much an inevitable thing, but that was a very close 3-1. I was really impressed with Dignitas in their performance in that. But I think that being a competitive series and the fact that EG did 3-0 C9, who is like, even though it's not their LCS roster, I think people just like even analysts probably have their own bias about C9's like good, they're a good team, they're like Dignitas was like not good, and so they're like not as good a team. Do you think that like bias of like, oh man, like Liquid had a tough series against Dignitas, but EG 3-0'd Cloud9, so like EG's gotta be like, I feel like that maybe played into it some, but I do still find it to be like poor analysis, because like I can make those assumptions. I'm not spending 40 hours a week like studying up on
like that's what I'm saying. Like it's your job to be right. Like we do this as a hobby, and for anybody questioning my motives, go and check the Twitter hashtag #TLWin right before the games kicked off.
You did.
Wasn't after game 2. It was right before the series.
Because
win.
Yep, I like got the notification on my phone because I have our tweet notifications turned on my Twitter because I keep that as my primary.
I appreciate that.
So whenever you tweet something, I know the instant that goes out, and so I looked at it and I'm like, I see hashtag TLWin. I'm like, all right.
I mean, like, come on, Raz, get up off the desk. Get me in there, son. I mean, what are you paying these motherfuckers for? Like, if you're paying them to be wrong, to have this reaction, well, hey, there you go, mission accomplished. But if you're paying those people for, like, hey, you know what you're talking about, right? Man, get me in the game, son.
Well, being an analyst should not be like being a weatherman.
Exactly. Thank you. You do understand my point.
Yeah, like weathermen can be right or wrong, and they'll have a job the next day. They could say, "Oh, you're gonna get 10 inches of snow," and then the wind blows the other way, fucking 5 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you get nothing, and they're like, "Well, we'll get them next time."
They just get a million chances. But, like, all right, so just looking critically, like, at the teams that are in question. So, yeah, Cloud9, they don't have their full roster, so, you know, whatever, that's fine. But to talk critically about the Dignitas roster, I think a lot of that is off the back of River. Like, his jungling is aggressive enough that he's able to make plays for his laners, but also, like, it seems like he's playing an information game with the enemy jungler where he's keeping them in the game by saying, like, hey, at least the jungler's here, don't push up bottom lane, hey, I'm coming mid, he's going to be blah, 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 blah. It seems like River's just playing a decent information game, which is giving Dig the edge. But what I wanted to say about Evil Geniuses is I truly believe, and whatever, I truly believe they were overrating this Jojo Pyun kid during the pregame and the analysis and whatever. I mean, they were trying to do the whole like Zoomer versus Boomer, like Jojo here's like the new kid coming in against Bjergsen. It didn't even look close. Like, my man stole one Baron and they were like, oh my god, Jojo is the truth. He was literally like 1-2 down 10,000 CS. And it's like, okay, I see.
And I mean, I will definitely, like, admit I've been decently impressed by him as a rookie mid laner. Like he's come out and he's performed like he has had better performance than most rookie mid laners in recent memory have had that are not like I don't think not like a fucking wunderkind like fucking incarnation coming to the LCS after being ridiculous and only not being in professional play because he was banned by Riot for a period of time or something like that, or like someone who is like they worked their way up. He went through EG's academy team and he's now getting the starting roster spot on their LCS team and everything. And like I think he's had a solid performance. He hasn't been like the best player on the team on the fucking map, but he's held his own decently and so like that and I've said this about different things before, but like it's disingenuous to be like, oh, Bjergsen versus Jojo Pune,
well,
and like
that's what I'm saying. Like they were like painting that matchup, and it's like
it is the marquee matchup because it's the marquee matchup, but not for what they were making it seem. Not because they were like Jojo Pune is gonna be able to fucking hold his own. It's like, is he gonna be able to hang on enough to like Bjergsen is even being out of the LCS for a year, which is not like a huge amount of time by any means. We've seen plenty of other players take times off.
Every day.
He was coaching, like, and I'm sure he was like helping internally with scrims and things like that, and like helping TSM with like 1v1s and matchups, and like he didn't lose it all because he took 1 year off and was coaching. But like
but nor are we saying he's still GOAT status either. Like,
he has to keep showing up and like performing well to really show that he has maintained his form and everything. But like to think that this guy, no, and this is not a knock to Jojo Pune. He was playing North American Academy LCS last year. Last June was his first game that I'm seeing.
Sure. Everybody like deserves time and experience and whatever.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like.
Oh no! I'm just saying like the expectation for these like the going back to the casters and analysts for them to look at this and say, oh, this guy that's been playing like semi-professional and then professional League of Legends for fucking what is June of 2021? That's 8 months ago. Yeah. This man had his first, if you want to call like North American Academy a like professional play.
Right.
8 months ago, this man started playing professionally, and is
when you look at it from that perspective, he stole a fucking Baron in the series. He looks incredible.
No, I just mean like the expectation for him to keep up with someone like Bjergsen, who has been in LCS for like it seems like forever. It has to be at least like 5 years, 5 or 6 years before this year of Bjergsen playing in LCS.
Not to mention his time, over on NIP when he was over in EU.
Yeah, like he has had 2012 was his first like quote unquote professional team that he was on.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's 8 years ago. But that's kind of
no. 2012 is 10 years ago, man.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like so I think
checkbook.
Like Jojo Pune like did what he was going to, but for them to look at that matchup and everything and just be like, oh yeah, like fucking he's gonna just run away with this and EG's gonna 3-0. That was like I just have such trouble understanding where that comes from.
Yeah, it's weird. And it's not like Bjergsen's the only player on Team Liquid. I think. Well, yeah. So this is kind of what I was getting to. Whippo played out of his mind in those 3 games. He was a fucking house. So regardless of anything we say about JoJo, Pion, or Bjergsen, honestly, I think the series fucking came down to Santorin and Whippo like playing like they were 2 heads on a single body.
Yeah, it just
Whippo
unbelievable.
Was insane.
He was performing just so extremely well in that series, and like him on the Graves, what like he.
Well, every time they came after him, I thought he was going to get a double kill. That's how, like, he was, like, dashing forward at them and shit. I was like, dude, this guy is a madman. And even when he was doing that, like, it was the right play. Like, they couldn't shut him down, which was wild. So, yeah, and so he played Graves, Gwen, and did he play a third champ?
Or he played Graves, Gangplank, and then
Gangplank.
It was Graves, Gangplank, and shit. What was his last one? Was it Volibear?
Oh yeah, I think it was. I'm not Gwen. I was thinking about the Gangplank into Gwen matchup.
Yeah,
which I was surprised with.
Well, because I think Gwen has become kind of Impact's like one of his go-to champions in this meta. Like he performed extremely well on that in the series versus Cloud9. So
yeah, but yeah, overall, I just think the series really came down to just Whippo getting the better of that top side, using Santorin to his advantage. The bottom half of the map didn't break at all, and then it was a pretty clean 3-0. Honestly, I think Liquid performed really well. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, the like Santorin, Bjergsen, I think like obviously, yes, they played together before many, many moons ago, but like Bjergsen has been one of the best mid laners in the LCS, and Santorin has also in the past couple of years really proven himself again as being one of, if not the best jungler in the LCS. Seeing them together is just going to be like Team Liquid's going to be very tough to beat. And that's aside from Whippo playing like a goddamn maniac. And like not just Core JJ, but Ayla coming in and playing really solid support next to Hans Sama, who is one of the better AD carries, who was in the LEC for the past few years. Like
he was actually really fun to watch in the series too. His positioning was so strong.
Hans Sama, well, and that's like one of his keys. Like, and no offense to Hans Sama, but I do find him to be a bit of a meta dependent AD carry, because he does have the positioning. He like that's why the Draven is one of his pocket picks. That's why he's able to pull out picks like that positioning is super, super important on, and perform well with them in his matchups and in his games and everything, because he's able to like have that fine positioning and everything. But then there are going to be other metas where it is like certain champions that are not lending themselves to that as much. Like you have to be more aggressive, or you have to do this, or you have to do that, and his positioning can be great where he's staying on the edge of where he can put out damage, but if he's not like in a position to carry, like just sitting on the edge of things and like putting out little bits here and there isn't going to necessarily do the trick.
Sure. Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with that. Quite meta dependent overall. But yeah, I enjoyed what I saw from the series overall. I was just happy that Team Liquid won. Happy that my boy Bjergsen back in action.
Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations to Team Liquid on their 3-0 in the lock-in tournament. They got that.
Mm-hmm.
They got that cash. They got that bread for the team. So good on them for that. Along with $50,000, I believe, to the charity of their choosing, which I'm not sure what that was. So I have to
The
look.
Reginald Battered Players Fund.
They can't just throw 50 more $1,000 at Bjergsen. Actually, no. You'd have to split it with Santorin. I take it back.
He would, yeah.
So,
Send out royalties to Double F.
but I did, before we move on to other regions, I did want to come back real quickly to what you had said about Dignitas and River. And I wanted to just like say that that's another part of like why Dignitas I think like stood out, was like very impressive to me, because River, up until, I mean, he was playing on PSG Talon. He's played in the in the LMS for the past few years and all. So with him being able to still coordinate everything on the map, like to be able to like have such good cohesion and good synergy with his different lanes and everything, as like the only person from Korea on the team. I mean, we've got North America, River from Korea, Germany, Canada, like Vietnam. We're not running into the same, and so for his communication, their cohesion as a team to be as strong as it has seemed so far, I was highly impressed with them being able to incorporate him in, and like he is shown in the jungle as a bright point on that roster. Not to take away from anyone else, because I've honestly been impressed that the team as a whole has done as well as they have so far in the lock-in. But yeah, that was just one thing that like made that even more impressive to me, that I wanted to mention, that this is like
multinational squad.
Multinational, and he is just freshly in. Like I really have no idea what his level of English is, but I can't imagine that it is super far along necessarily. Like maybe it is, maybe he has like impeccable English and I'm talking out my ass, but as far as I'm aware, like this is his first time in an English speaking environment for professional play, and that has shown its challenges in the past for different players, and so like that makes it even more impressive to me. So
yeah, I'd be interested to find out what his English skills are like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that definitely has caused issues like you were saying. Like I know there were periods of like Koreans on Chinese teams and Chinese nationals on Korean teams. So yeah, all sorts of things could get mixed up. Now talking about LPL and LCK, I'll say two things. I think we're gonna get a Gumayusi World Championship skin, and then a Championship Jinx skin that says Gumayusi on it as the rank thing. Because A, Jinx is getting played out the ass everywhere, and B, OT1 is 6-0 going into this weekend, baby. They are back in action, dude. They just took down Damwon. Oh my god, it was a heater of a series. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. Honestly, I don't know how they came back from that. Did you watch that series?
I didn't. I'm like looking at everything, and now I'm going to be going back to look at it, but I have not.
It was so fucking crazy. They each get a game, and then in game 3, honestly, it looks like Damwon's game the whole time. The whole time it is Damwon's game. A couple of key picks here. Faker's doing his thing on LeBlanc. A couple of these things here. I won't spoil it, but god damn is it a good series. And T1 is back on top. It's so exciting to see. But let me start off the international region conversation here. There's something about all of the regions where we have teams like, except for North America, we don't care. there are teams that are undefeated at the top of the table. We have LNG in the LPL, T1 is undefeated in the LCK, and right now Rogue, I believe, is undefeated
They are.
in
They're 7
the
0.
LEC. So, and then like a bunch of parity around the middling teams. So, what I want to ask you as we open up the conversation going like into the other regions, what is it that is separating these teams that are at the top of the table and just getting these wins?
It
Is there a common through line? Are they doing something right? Is it their read on the meta? What do you think?
I feel like I feel like there are multiple components to it, and I think that um, the main thing that I would say so far that I feel like has been a kind of carry through thing is comfortability in the current meta. I think that is but that also in itself lends itself to multiple different components in terms of like, are your players able to be flexible in a meta? Because you could have someone who is a freaking one trick on like Vayne, and like now all of a sudden this isn't their meta and they're no longer able to be a competent AD carry on like on the level of where they're at. But when you look at a team like T1, I think that over like historically in that team, in that like ownership and everything in that environment, they have fostered the ability to like play a lot of different like styles. Like we've seen, I mean, Faker's Zed play is one of the most famous like League of Legends plays of all time. But like when you think of Faker, what are the top 3 champions that you're thinking of him playing? I think LeBlanc, Ryze, and Syndra probably. Like I'm not thinking of Zed as like Faker. Like when I think Faker's main champions, like so I think that, and obviously teams are all trying to breed flexibility and everything in their rosters, but I think that T1 has a historical performance of doing that very well. And for players like Faker in particular, and obviously like Zeus owner, Gumayuse, Korea, like they're all newer players in regard to that, but I think that they have found a good fit in this current meta with their play styles. I'd be interested to see how well they carry it on if some of those metas for the different roles do kind of shift and move around, to see if they maintain this level of play. And I think that similarly over in the LPL, I mean, we have like on LNG, I think all of these players are people who are able to really play in a number of different styles, I guess. Like B in particular, like he has shown performance on a number of different like champions that he has not typically been playing. He has typically been kind of that sit back and play more of a passive play style and everything in his, or not passive, but like he's not trying to win lane. He's trying to utilize his role as the mid laner to assist other areas of the map and get those other lanes ahead and all. So you see him a lot more on like the Twisted Fates and like the Gallios and things like that. But he has been branching out and playing more champions that are like lane centered or lane dominant and things like that to win lane. And so there's that flexibility in that to meet the meta. And so I think that is really like where I'm at for these teams that are on the top of the table, is that not only do they it only matters so much to know what the meta is. Like, you can know what
I'd be able to
champions
play it.
you can know what champions are strong, what champions are dominant, or what champions are just better than others, or matchups, whatever in the draft. Like, you can draft well. Doesn't mean that your players are going to be able to take those champions and utilize them, and not only be able to play them in a way that they don't just like lose, or they can maintain their level, but also to be able to take, okay, these are the strong champions right now. How do these champions work together as a whole? And how can we use that to meet win conditions? Do we need to, like, hey, freaking Camille, like, can be a great pick in a team fighting meta where you want to isolate someone and then immediately die, like, you want to like get that team fight and then pick someone real quick and then boom, like you're in a 5-on-4 and Camille's using her like I'm blanking on her
Like
ability
dash
name.
thing?
Yeah, like to be able to dive in and stun and like continue on the fight. But also Camille could be a fucking 1-4 split pusher who's down there in the bot lane, like just trying to push down turrets and everything and trying to fight people one-on-one. It's not just how can I use this champion to play well. It's like, how can I use this champion to play well along with my team comp, and like how can we create like win conditions with these different champions. And I think that's something that I never realized about or thought as much about with League of Legends. I think in the past that I've always been like, oh, like these are the strongest champions in each lane. You try to get the strongest champions and then like you just like win lanes, or like you have to, or if you have these champions, you have to play this way. You have to play that way. And I feel like as I've like watched more, paid attention more, like you realize that every time the meta shifts and different champions become the predominant, like strongest in their role, you also have to, or the players, the coaches have to find a way to make these strongest things work together in a cohesive way.
Right. Like, just because you have this roster of 5 champions, it doesn't explicitly tell you how you're supposed to play out the team comp. Where, you know, maybe your team is really good at, we really like the 3-1-1 split push, but oh shit, these top 5 champions aren't good for that. We gotta switch it up and learn how to play different. So what I'm hearing is the versatility and adaptability of these teams at the top of the table, you believe, are what are keeping them from like dropping these maps.
Yeah, and also just like I think being able to pick up on it early on in the season, because I think that this current the current meta is not only very different from like what we were seeing at Worlds. Like obviously there are some champions that are still strong, but like there's a lot of things that have changed. There are, like, dragons have changed. There have been a lot of changes to the game itself, along with new champions who have come in, who are being
Different
played
items.
pretty consistently, different items. Like, there have been a lot of fluctuations in that, and so I really do attribute, and not to say that these teams won't be able to carry on their performance, but I think that the teams that have been able to figure out the meta, figure out like those things quickly early on in the season so far, and also have very competent or comparable players in each of their roles, are performing to like the top of the table. Like,
sure. You
don't
they're using the right weapons and they're performing.
Right. Like, they don't have to be like, T1 doesn't have to have the best top laner, the best jungler, the best mid laner, the best bot laner, the best support. Like, a bunch of those roles, like, yeah, they do need to have a couple of guys who are performing towards the top of it, but the other people on the team can just be holding their own, relatively average, but know how to play out the team comp properly, and they're going to perform well at this stage. And so, like, really, I think for the other regions, for the, like, LCK, for the LPL, going forward, I think that we really do need to see, like, week 4, week 5, and some of these differentiations as they are kind of spreading out to continue to validate, like, how we're seeing everything right now. However, I will say, at least in the LCK, I do feel as though that, like, T1 and Gen G are probably runaway favorites for that region currently, and not because they're the two teams at the top of the table, but because they are far separated at the top of the table so early on. We have 6-0 T1, 5-1 Gen G, and Gen G's loss was to T1.
Yeah.
So
Damwon is so close to being,
I believe,
4-2 though, with a 5-1 T1. Like,
yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, like, that series was so great. Like, the 3-3 Damwon, like, dude.
Oh yeah.
It was good. Like, it's good League of Legends over there is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and so, like, looking at this, looking at the table and everything, like, the fact that those two are separated by, like, Genji's 2 games up on Damwon, KT Rolster, Nongshim, Dragon X, like, and T1 3 games up on each of those teams, like, that is a big enough gap early on that I am comfortable to say that they're the top teams and should stay the top teams going forward through the spring split at least. Whereas, like, other regions, like in the LPL, for instance, like, yeah, LNG and LNG's 5-0, RNG's 5-1, but then you've got EDG at 4-0, Weibo Gaming at 4-1, Billie Gaming at 3-1, Victory 5-3. Like, you have to get down to, like, the 7th team in the LPL currently to be like, okay, like, this is where that gap starts to form. And obviously they have more more teams in the LPL, but I still, like, the fact that you have to go that far down the list to hit teams where you're like, okay, like, this is maybe where it's falling off a little bit. And, like, you still have 6 teams that are competitive at the top of the table in that
Definitely
region.
not that far off. Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying. So maybe right now the zeros in the record may be a little bit misleading until we see a little bit more data.
Potentially, like, they might not be either. Like, it's possible that, I mean, Rogue, the, like, Fnatic and G2 are both tied for second at 5-2, and both of those teams have showed very serious flaws already in this season, which they're working to combat and to improve upon and everything. But Rogue has looked very dominant at the top of that table. They don't really look like they're running into similar troubles that some of these other teams are. And that is, like, little bit probably due to meta and them knowing it and learning it and everything, a little bit due to just, like, the cohesion of their team kind of staying relatively the same as it has in previous seasons and all. So they do have a little bit less of that to make up for.
Right.
But I would not be surprised to see Rogue continue to hang at the top of the LEC. Just as I wouldn't be surprised or shocked to see T1 stay at the top along with Gen G of the LCK. So
Yeah, and not necessarily like undefeated the whole way, but yeah, they're just going to be tough to take boards off of.
definitely. So it'll be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to kind of continuing to see how everything goes forward. But I guess I unfortunately didn't get to watch much of the LCK or LPL this past week. But did you have any other specific like matchups or games that you were watching that like caught your eye, or even over into the LEC? Anything that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I'll say in the LEC, I think there were a couple of games from Saturday that were, pretty exciting. I think when you look at the different regions, it's interesting the different type of broadcast that it feels like. LEC and NA feel like more of a show with the games as like the thing, and then LPL and LCK feel like it's like really more about the games. And I'm not sure if that's just my take or whatever.
I think that's due to primary production focus for the LCK and LPL being to the Chinese or the Korean broadcasts. I think that's just that like the English casts of those regions
are just more bare bones.
They don't have the full on like here's the in between game blah blah blah
Right.
that's going on like in the LEC or in NALCS, where they have like the more sillier fluff kind of stuff around it that like adds
Right.
around it. I think that's most likely why that they're just like, okay, like we have English speaking casters to cast these games for the other regions, but like otherwise like we don't have an analyst desk that's, I mean, I'm
The
not
casters do the analysis.
yeah, like they don't have like let's flip it over to Dash on the
Right.
analyst desk. So I think that's probably the most likely reason for that. But
And yeah, so like what I'm getting at with that is it's a like it's okay, but I don't feel like the games are that strong where, and here's me beating a dead horse, but I wish we would have more games from the individual matchups, because I feel like I'm not learning anything at the conclusion of the game.
you
So
you get
makes
one
it,
game on one day for each team, and then you're just
yeah,
like I feel like we saw a lot more from the LCS with these best of fives in the playoffs and seeing the
right.
teams in those matchups as opposed to the best of ones that you see in the regular season.
Right. And so from like a critical analysis perspective, I don't think there's a whole lot going on in the LEC right now, especially when we're living in a world where the fucking super team from the region is like dropping games consistently, and it's just, it's all topsy-turvy. So I think what I'm getting at is hopefully we see maybe a move to maybe just 2 game series, just to get like a 1-1 split or something. But yeah, the best of ones are tough from like a critical analysis perspective.
Yeah.
But what I will say about LEC is Fnatic is really fun to watch. I like their games. Humanoid is a beast of a mid laner. I really like watching him. And just Fnatic, it feels like they're playing with, similar to like what we talked with about Team Liquid, it feels like they play with a team flavor. Like watching them feels like Fnatic in a way. And I don't know if that's like nostalgia or whatever, or like if that's even how it should be, but I like Fnatic's playstyle, so they're a fun team to watch. But what I will say for LPL is the RNG and I guess it's pronounced Billie Gaming. That series was really exciting because what I thought was going to be a very clean 2-0 from Royal. Billie actually had a solid answer in the game 2, and to bring it to a game 3, RNG ends up winning the series. But I think it was an interesting showcase of how scrappy these LPL teams can be, and the depth of knowledge that you get just from knowing, like, oh, okay, well, they took a game off of them. Like, that's so much better than just like, oh yeah, TSM lost to Dignitas or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, well, if TSM comes back then and like wins another game, then you can at least say, oh, well, at least they're even. Then you can look at, team comp, what they did differently or whatever. So I think from a critical analysis perspective, obviously LPL and LCK there's just gonna be more meat there. But yeah, I have enjoyed what I watched from the LEC this weekend. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've gone through different periods of time with like the LEC and the LCS always seem to be trying to figure out what's the best like way to. I think viewership matters the most for LEC and LCS, and so it's not about performance of the region being the best. Neither team has won a fucking world championship since season 1. Like, if you can consider that yeah, I guess you can consider that worlds, but like they do, but like it's not on the same like level by any means as even the season 2 world championship was or anything. Like it's very like set apart, and that's the only time that North America or Europe have won the world championship. So the focus being in those regions on more of, I think, viewership and building a viewer/player base, I think seems to be the primary focus, which lends itself to not necessarily having the best system. Because looking at the LCK, you have 2 series a night, 5 nights a week.
Yep.
I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers played last night, and then they played tonight, and my roommate was watching both of those games. Like, that's like a normal thing in professional sports. You have the baseball teams playing a 3-game series in the regular season against the same team in their stadium night, like 3 nights in a row. You have back-to-back games in the NBA. You have like every other night your NHL team that you're rooting for is like playing another game every other night. Like the fact that we're what, 11 years in, this is the season 11, season 12?
Yeah, I think
season 12. Season 12 of League of Legends, and we're like sticking to like, oh, you get games on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then like 4 days off, I think is just not conducive to the highest quality of like matchups and series. Like if you did something like the LCK where you have five nights a week of LCS, 3 games, best of 3s, doesn't even have to be a 3-game series all the time. Bunch of them are going to be 2-0s, but like to do that gives much better quality of perception going forward into like actual analysis of how quality these teams are.
Yeah, and it's like there's something where I can understand that, where it's just like what you're selecting for, because we know that the game doesn't translate into esports viewership. They're just trying to like, get as much exposure for these teams and I can understand that from like a production standpoint, they are focusing on it like more of a show, but it just makes this tough where it's like I know the audience that would listen to this podcast would want to hear about the NALCS, but there's something weird where it's like, well, no, like come over here with us because there's something about it where the other regions are where the actual competition is. Yeah, LEC and NALCS are a funny show going
Well,
on,
or
but when
even
you
the
look at it from a historical perspective, like you were bringing up about Worlds, is they've never been serious contenders. So why do we care?
right, and that's why like
It's
looking
tough.
at some of and I did it in this year in our like new year of the podcast and everything, like looking at initially what was being played in the LCS and the LEC, I was going, well, this is what's getting played in the LCK and the LPL consistently. Why are these LCS and LEC teams not picking those up? Why are we not seeing the Corki as much? Why are we not seeing this? Why are we not seeing that? Because in those regions, they've been the best.
Yeah.
Like, you have to look at the top teams and say, why are these the top teams? These are the top teams. Like, I'm not saying you have to mimic play styles and everything, but to be able to say, okay, like these are the top champions that are being picked. Like, why are they not being picked in our region? Like, that is
Right.
that
Right.
is
That's
something.
the question.
It's a good question to ask.
I
It's
agree.
a good thing to look at, and so
Well, and then you see them like 3 weeks later, right?
right,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's like you can't constantly be lagging behind, because if you do, then you see what we had seen for years and years at Worlds, where teams go to boot camp in Korea, they start trying to play the Korean or whatever, Korean, Chinese, whatever the strongest play style is. You
right.
see the Western teams trying to mimic those play styles, and you will never be able to mimic someone else's play style learning it in 1 month of boot camping, as
Mm-hmm.
they are going to be for an entire season of playing that play style, along with being there for the same boot camp that you were there for.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you're not going to be able to mimic someone else's play style and be better than them unless you have better individual players
Right.
across the board.
Which nine
And,
times out of ten you don't. Ten
yeah,
times out of ten you don't.
like you could have teams that like G2 in previous years that had like individual players that do match up to each of the other regions, but
Mm-hmm.
they never were able to get over the hump, whether it
Right.
was G2, whether it was Fnatic, they couldn't get that. They made it to the finals. That's where it ended. Like,
Right.
that's and it's an unfortunate thing of like getting better reading the meta, reading how to play, and like playing that from the get-go instead of having to follow along and play follow the leader and go, oh, this has been played over there in the LCK and LPL for 2 weeks. Okay, like I need to learn this champion. Let's learn this playstyle. Like, you're always just
Right.
going to be behind if you're not reading the same things that those teams are picking up on
Mm.
and prioritizing champions because of. You're not going to get that same level or put yourself in the same position. So,
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to the conversation you were talking about with the teams that are at the top of the table. It's the versatility, adaptability. They're the ones either making the meta or seeing the meta shift. You know, the patch notes drop for everybody on the same day.
Yep.
I would imagine there's some, insight or whatever the fuck. But yeah, patch notes are released the same day for everybody, so it's just about like who hops on the theory crafting wagon first. But yeah, overall, I think this is a fascinating 2022 spring split. I think what we're seeing in the top regions, in China and LCK is really exciting. I think it's fun to see T1 top of the table. Obviously, every series I go into, like, oh, is this the one where they drop a board? Like, oh no, we don't want to see Faker slump. But man, it's a treat to watch. So I'm really enjoying this season.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna have to go back over the next couple days before we get back into the upcoming week's games and watch the T1 Damwon series as well as the Billie RNG series. Check those out and everything. So I will be kind of on the same page seeing those as you are. But moving forward from the LCS and all, we're pushing our time on this week's episode, so we wanted to jump into the flavor of the week. So Justin, if you don't mind, I will go ahead and get rolling on mine.
Get us started.
So, beautiful. So for my food this past week, Colleen and I on Thursday night, we got together and everything, and we typically try to do cooking together. She wanted to do salmon, so she got some salmon. We had salmon, asparagus, and some risotto, and I made a nice orange cream sauce for the salmon that I had made in one of my courses back in college when we had done a salmon recipe. And so that was delicious. And I just, in general, it's really fun to cook together and to kind of come up with new things that we want to cook and each do our little things and figure out which parts we're on top of and everything. So
yeah, that's sweet.
We enjoy that a lot. For my music, I'm still in. Well, I'm working on my winter playlist that I'm kind of what I'm listening to. I've been trying to do one for each season recently. And so a couple of songs that made it, one song that made it on that also led into some other music that I've listened to. So Charmander by Amine, or Amine? How do you say it?
I think you say it Amine.
Amine? Okay. So I wanted to make sure, but
I'm obviously an expert.
But that song, I've liked it a lot since you put it on my radar. And it has some hyper pop components a little bit at the beginning, where I've had some other hyper pop artists that I've listened to, 100 Gex, and there's a couple of others that have come across I can't think of off the top of my head, but I've had a little bit of that kind of working its way back into some of my common music that I'm listening to. So
nice.
Just the that song specifically, which also makes me want to just dive a little bit more into his music, along with some of that hyper pop and getting that back in my kind of common playthroughs and everything, has been a nice little change from I kind of resetting and just shifting into more music or different styles of music in the new season. So
yeah, for sure.
So that's been cool. Nice. For my show, Colleen and I started watching Australian Survivor, and so I've been a Survivor fan for decades now, and have really enjoyed that. And so watching the Australian version, we started on season 1, and it's just been entertaining to see kind of the commonalities and similarities between that and the Survivor that I'm used to watching, along with it's interesting looking at it almost as so Survivor is obviously kind of a social experiment. You throw a bunch of people into a living situation who are coming all from different backgrounds and whatever, and having.
Are you explaining Survivor to me?
No, I'm just saying you have this, but I think the culture of it's interesting to look at the like social game of it, because in America, I feel like our version, people are so much more adept at like beating around the bush, and like I think Americans are pretty good at like saying a lot of words and not saying anything in a lot of instances.
Sure.
And I've one thing I noticed watching the Australian version of Survivor is that I think Australians are typically much more blunt or much more straight to the point with like the way they talk about things, than we are here. And so watching them try to like lie or try to not give away what their game plan is or like who they're voting for and whatnot, you can it's so easily, you can easily tell when they're like holding something back. It's like,
Sure. No
it's like
Rob.
it's like, are you gonna, I can tell you have more to say. You wanna put that out there, and they're like, nope. Everyone's a nice team here. We all do our part. And it's like, fuck you. You're just like, you're a terrible liar. But I think it's funny because it's like, they're terrible liars because in typical day-to-day life, they're much more straight to the point than I think we are. So it's been entertaining to watch and kind of compare the differences and to like notice some of the social differences between us and here in America and like Australia. So
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
yeah, but that is my flavor of the week.
Nice.
How about yourself, my friend?
So I've got some boring ones here for you, but this is where we're at. So my visual medium, me and Sarah went back and we watched Mark Norman's YouTube comedy special. It's called Out to Lunch. It has, it's developed into like one of my favorite bits of comedians. And so Out to Lunch from Mark Norman. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's free on YouTube. It is hilarious. I love his delivery. I love his style. Like his angle on things is really funny. Like the way he can turn a joke. Like you, obviously, like that's what makes you laugh. It's like you think he's going one way, but he goes the other way. Like,
Yeah.
He even goes the other way. You're like, oh, I didn't think he would go there. Like it's so good. So yeah, Mark Norman, Out to Lunch. Check it out. So that's a great special. And for my food, it's going to be a continuing thing. It's not something I had. It's something I will have. I'm taking no sugar in my coffee now because I figure if I'm going to have 1,000,000 cups of it a day, I might as well not be, having that little teaspoon of sugar with it as well.
I love that. I haven't had sugar in my coffee in a long time, and that's because my pop-up says that that's what our family does, is drink.
Yeah, but that's that's like weird.
But I also enjoy like the taste of coffee and the flavor, so like for myself it's not an issue to not have sugar in it. But I agree, the more coffee you drink, if you're putting sugar in it, it adds up more than you realize.
Yeah, big time.
Because coffee is so bitter, it like you don't even realize how much sugar you can put in it without it like being noticeable.
Right. And I would only do like a little bit, but yeah, I'm working on that. So yeah, it's been a couple days, and honestly, it hasn't been that bad. I probably really only noticed it like the first 2 days on like a taste type thing, and now I'm just kind of like, oh well, yeah, this is fine. I just whatever.
Well, and it lets you like try different like types of coffee too. Like I'd be interested to see how you would do with like
notice the notes more.
Yeah, like I'd be interested to see you try like a blonde roast or something like that and see like what your thoughts are compared to like your normal like whatever Folgers, Dunkin', Star whatever coffee you typically get. And kind of see the differences and all.
Falling short of it, coffee reviews coming right up.
There we go.
And then my music for the week, me and Sarah were talking about Kanye West, and historically what what was good and blah blah blah, and this is the revelation. I was like, you know what? I really the more I get away from it, I'm pretty sure I came into Kanye like around graduation and blah blah blah. And the more I look back, I'm like, it's not that good. And then I went back and I looked at the track list. I was like, okay, there's 2 bad songs on here.
Dude, Graduation is a good album.
It's
like it's a good album, but like Kanye just has a lot of better albums.
Right.
It's
like,
not
the front half of it is like it does not miss, but after track like 10 or so, you're just like, I'll skip this one. That's an interlude. All right, this one's good.
But it's still not a bad album. It's just that like Kanye has put out a lot of other good music, I feel like.
Yeah, the bar is so fucking high that like sticks out. So yeah, just it's interesting just thinking back through his catalog and just like all the lines that he has in his songs. And I was thinking about it. I was like, honestly, I rate him so much more, like not as like a rapper or anything, but what blows my mind about him, and I think this is his superpower, is knowing exactly how to use an artist on a track as like the feature. Like for I forget what song it was, but he just had somebody just do like a vocal, just like a little like singing over the top. Like somebody that another artist would pay like bagillions of dollars for like a full 16. He was like, nah, I just need you to hum. I just need you to hum for 3 seconds. But then when you listen to the complete project, you're like, yes. If that was anything else, right? So it's like the superpower of how he brings these artists together. And you know what started the conversation was Monster, which is on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which has one of the best hip-hop verses, not from a female, best hip-hop verse, hands down. The Nicki Minaj verse on Monster, she annihilates it.
This is something that I've like come to my own personal revelation on like in recent like months, but Nicki Minaj was like I consider her probably like the GOAT like female rapper as of right now. Like, and I look at like Cardi B and like some of these other like women who have come up and like made a name for themselves and everything, and no discredit to them, but like Nicki Minaj's shit, like she had some hard fucking verses. She had some
mechanically
bars.
She can really do it.
Like she's good, and I did not give her the credit that she deserved back in the day. So,
well, let me just point out an interesting similarity here, talking about like mechanics and like the craft of it. So, tell me another artist that uses, you know how she would do like the personalities, like rap high, rap low, the growl. Like she was coming from like different like personalities of herself. Eminem did that.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. Like you can clearly see the influence, the style, but she does it in her own way.
And very well, yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about that, and that verse got me talking about Kanye, got me talking about like, oh, like I just love how he puts people together. Like literally Jay-Z, Rick Ross is on that same exact song. But you barely even think about it.
Well, and that's like why I think we gave so much credit to Kanye when he put out the 7-album Summer where he was producing those. Like he did phenomenally with like
so good.
Those were phenomenal albums that he produced and everything that summer, and so like I think that is one of his extreme, like he's an extremely talented individual, but like putting people in the right place is definitely one of them. So.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard it, Monster by Kanye West, beautiful dark twisted fantasy, incredible verse. That's my flavor of the week.
Nice.
It's been fun.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for listening. You can, of course, find us on Twitter. Keep Justin scrolling. But no, get in, talk to us about what's going on with you guys, what you're looking forward to in League of Legends, out there in F1, in Magic the Gathering. Join the conversation. You'll find us on Spotify, on YouTube. You can see our lovely faces there with video and everything. But Justin, that's all I've got for us this week.
I would say great plugs. I just want to say for myself, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate your time so much. We look forward to doing this every week. This is truly a blessing to be here across from my compatriot here. Again, thank you so much for listening. New episodes every Thursday. This has been another Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out.
Later.